This will be a short guide on installing and using the Game Music Emulator. It's available as a RetroArch core, so you can use it on most systems running RetroArch, but I'll be using the Miyoo Mini Plus and Onion OS for this video. The Game Music Emulator was mentioned to me by user Ilker Yoldas in a comment. I try to check things out that people suggest to me, but it may take just a bit of time for me to get around to it. It took me about a month, but here I am, and why don't we get into it? The neat thing about the Game Music Emulator is that it actually emulates the sound chip for the physical hardware for each system. Instead of playing a file representing sound waves like MP3, OGG, and FLAC files, it contains instructions and sometimes program data to run on the emulated sound chip. As for the file types, you'll typically find VGM files, which stand for Video Game Music Files, or VGZ files, which are compressed VGM files. If you take a look at the official GME documentation, we see that a lot of file types are supported. Each of them are for different systems, such as .gym files being an abbreviation for Genesis YM2612, which is a sound chip for the Sega Genesis/Mega Drive. So where can you find VGM files? If you Google VGM Rips, you should find a couple of sites that host music rips from games. I'm no lawyer, but I do believe that technically it can be illegal to download these files much like ROMs, so keep that in mind. Also keep in mind that most systems will not work properly when using the GME core on the Miyoo Mini. I don't know if this is a limitation of the hardware or the software. I had so much trouble getting files to play properly that I thought something was wrong with my Onion install until I asked Ilker Yoldas. He clarified that only a small list of systems shown here work for the Game Music Emulator on the Miyoo Mini Plus. Thanks again for the help, buddy. I'd recommend sticking to Sega systems, mostly the Genesis/Mega Drive, but you guys are free to test whichever system you want yourselves and see if you can get them working. Once we download the music rips, the easiest way to organize them into albums is to create a zip file containing all the songs. This is because if you just have the individual VGM files in a folder, you can only open up one song at a time, and this will be very inconvenient when it comes to loading new songs. I also tried using M3U playlists, but it didn't seem to work at all. This step may be a little inconvenient for some, but I would definitely recommend using a program like 7-Zip. You can simply organize albums into folders. Right-click on the folder, go down to 7-Zip, and then select Add to Archive. In the 7-Zip interface, make sure the archive format is selected to zip. The other options can be left on default settings. Press OK to start zipping your files. Do this for each album you want to create. Most sites will already have each game as a zipped album, and you can just use those files as is. I'm mentioning this step in case you want to remove a bunch of short sound effects and only have songs in your album, or make a custom album. Once you have your zipped albums ready, we'll move on to installing GME on your Miyoo Mini/Plus. Installing GME is very easy if you already have Onion OS installed. Since I go over this step in almost every guide, I'm going to keep it brief, and if you need more help, feel free to leave a comment or refer to my written guide linked below. Back up anything you want to keep on your microSD card, since we will be formatting, and formatting erases everything. Use a tool like Rufus or guiformat to format your card to FAT32. I'd recommend guiformat because it's very simple to use. You can also use Onion Desktop Tools, which was created by one of the devs of Onion OS. Download Onion OS from their GitHub, extract the contents using a program like 7-Zip, and then copy all the files inside that folder over to the root of your microSD card. Safely eject the microSD card from your PC, and then insert it into your Miyoo Mini/Plus, and then turn it on, and the installation should finish there in a few minutes. If something goes wrong, try reformatting and reinstalling Onion OS, updating your firmware, or using another microSD card. Once we boot up Onion OS, navigate to the app folder and then Package Manager. Press R once to go to the Apps tab, and make sure that Expert Shortcut and RetroArch Shortcut are enabled. We can use the export shortcut to access GME or load it manually from RetroArch. Press R one more time to go to the Export tab. Scroll down to Game Music Emulator GME and make sure it is enabled. Press Start twice to install and exit. Now we can go to the Export shortcut in the Apps folder and start GME there. We can also go into RetroArch, load the Game Music Emulator core, and then load our zipped albums as the content. You can use whatever method is more convenient for you. Now we're done with the installation process and we can transfer our albums over. Turn your handheld off and reinsert your microSD card back into your PC. Onion OS uses SD, ROMs, GME as the default path for the album files. You can select all your albums and then drag them over to the ROMs GME folder. If you want some keyboard shortcuts, Ctrl and A will highlight everything in the active window, Ctrl and C will copy those files, and then Ctrl and V will paste them into the active window. Safely eject your microSD card and insert it back into your Miyoo Mini Plus. Once we're back into Onion, navigate to Apps, Export shortcut. Before we do anything else, press Select to bring up the option to refresh all ROMs. Press A on this because otherwise we won't be able to see our newly added albums. Each time you copy over new albums, you will probably need to refresh the ROMs list if using the Export shortcut. Now start GME. The song list may appear blank sometimes, but if you just press down on the D-pad, the song list will start to populate. Pick an album and voila, you are playing video game music by emulating the sound chips for each system. Now if the sound files are not compatible, GME will either just exit straight away or play the first 5 seconds of each song in silence and then skip to the next track. If we take a look at this NES game, we can see that it just plays 5 seconds of silence per track. Now if we take a look at a Genesis/Mega Drive game, we can hear the audio playing properly. GME is pretty darn neat, but for people who just want to listen to music easily, I'd recommend using the GMU app. The GMU Music Player app is also available on Onion OS. It's just much easier to download and organize the songs into albums using GMU, and it supports pretty much most audio file types in use today. However, if you want to tinker around with how games process data, especially audio, GME is a helpful tool. If you start reading into all the documentation of how the audio files are formatted and ripped, you'll start to learn how each system processes the audio for their games. For example, the Super Nintendo stored every song in 64 kilobyte chunks because that is the memory limit of the S/SMP chip. This was very inefficient for small sound effects. For songs that required more space, the game would alter the memory while the song is playing. Just dumping the files and emulating only the sound chip won't make it sound right because you need the game to make the modifications during runtime. Isn't that neat? I'll provide the links below to some resources if you want to dive in. Okay, that's going to be it. Hope you guys found this helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment down below. I read every comment. Thanks again to Ilker Yoldas for the recommendation and help. As always, hope you guys are staying safe and sane out there, and catch you guys next time.